Good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast presented by Exterior Home Solutions. They've been local and trusted since 1999. If you have a need for roofing, siding, windows, or a garage, you can contact Exterior Home Solutions today. You can get a free estimate by picking up the phone and dialing 865-524-5888 or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. I'm Eric Cain with Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs. We got a lot of questions to get into, so we'll go ahead and jump into it. We'll start with Untitled 17. Faizon Brandon compares reasonably to who, Austin Price?
Oh, that's a great question. I just love. Let me try to think here. It's easy to say Hendon Hooker because he's from the same town. But I'm trying to think like a Damian Craig, something like that. I mean, with more talent. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, he's really cool and calm and like doesn't get, just kind of carries himself a certain way that, you like as a quarterback. Nico's got that same type of quality to him. Hendon had a similar type of quality to him. Again, I'm not done a deep dive on his game enough to look at comparisons. Plus, I don't like comparisons anyways, because, I mean, like, that's really unfair to the kid. Like, you start throwing out, like, crazy names. He's second coming of this guy. It's like, that puts a lot of pressure on a kid.
Right. I'll say this, and it's one camp deal that you're watching 30 minutes of throwing or whatever. I thought he was extremely accurate with the football at the night at Neyland camp. That was the one thing that stood out to me. The arm's obviously strong, but his accuracy was something that's probably what impressed me the most about him and watching him throw at that camp on Saturday night at night at Neyland.
Another question here from DolittleVol 7. We need to settle in. Do we need to settle in and get used to being in the conversation for a shot at Omaha consistently, don't we? Absolutely. You've already been there 2 of the past 3 years. If you win this weekend, that'll be 3 of the past 4 years. You've won the conference 2 of the past 3 years. You swept both the regular season and conference tournament. So, yeah, 100%. The expectation should be you'll be in the conversation for Omaha every single year. Doesn't mean you'll get there every single year because it's a challenge, but you're 100% in the conversation for sure. Vols fans, 1998, is Danny White in the process of reworking Coach Vitello's contract? If so, I would think he should be the highest paid coach in the SEC. Brent, we said in the Monday night chat and on the board consistently that they are working to try to get a contract ironed out. I don't expect that to be announced whatsoever while they're playing. Tony Vitello wouldn't want that, but that's certainly in the works for Vitello to get a contract extension to the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee has been proactive with this. I mean, Tony's got an agent, as you would expect, and they've been working with his agent to try to knock out a deal. Here's the thing about Tony, in my belief, and you guys jump in here. I mean, Austin, you know him. Everybody's had conversations with him casually or whatever. Tony's contract may not, if he gets the extension worked out, which obviously everybody's on board to try to get that done. I don't know that it will be for the, quote, highest paid deal for the head coach. He will be very, very deliberate about the parameters within the contract for his support staff and everything else. He will give up some money on his end, if need be, to make sure that his assistant coaches and support staff are among the highest paid in the country, if not the highest assistant pool to be in the country. I think that's as big a part of Tony Vitello working out an extension and a new agreement as it is what his specific salary is, because I think he's very much wants to make sure those around him are properly paid the way they should be.
I would agree. I mean, and think about it this way too. Frank Anderson's not going to be coaching forever, right? Josh Elander is going to be a head coach sooner or later. So Tony Vitello is going to have to be making some hires. I'm not saying this offseason, but here in the near future, and you want to have as much resources and as much things in your way that you can throw at some potential new staff members. And so I think that's a really, really good point. He always mentions how it's not just him. He gives credit to Elander and crazy ass Frank all the time. And so I think that's a really, really good point. But it does seem like everybody's on board to get that done over there.
Yeah, they're trying to get it done. They've been working on it for weeks. I mean, this is not something that wait a minute, they won the regular season. We need to get it. I mean, this has been like March, even as the season started, let's try to get a deal done. So it's very much been a priority and remains that.
but wise by Coach Vitello to kind of wait. Let's wait till the end of the season and see how this thing plays out. Because, I mean, the leverage is now, right? It's just like a high school kid. Like somebody asked me the other day, what do you think about that potential June signing period? I said, I don't think anybody'd sign. Because I said every 7-on-7 coach, high school coach, any kind of like, mentor is going to say, once you sign in June, the leverage is off the table. Now, yeah, they could transfer or whatever. I mean, kids still have a lot of power, but like it's still, you have your most leverage before you sign. So same thing here. His most leverage is before he signs that new deal.
Well, and he turns it over to his agent. His agent's running this negotiation. Obviously he knows, but I can promise you Tony Vitello's not getting daily updates right now about his contract negotiation because he's trying to get to Omaha. He's told his agent, hey, I'm giving you 10, 15% or whatever the contract is, Rob. You handle it. Let me know. Give me the bottom line numbers, and I'll tell you yay or nay when we get to that point. But he's not in it day to day. That's his agent's job.
And it's a testament. There's a tons of things you can say this about the baseball program, but it's a testament to Coach Vitello and what he's done that we're even having this conversation. Can you even imagine 10 years ago talking about Tennessee's baseball coach's contract and the leverage he had in negotiating one of the high I guess we're probably getting in the $2 million range. I would think it's at least in the conversation, but that's mind-boggling that that's where Tony has this thing, and he does. And I think the interesting part to me, Brent, is how much value does Danny place on it, because it's kind of a conversation piece that, as good as they are, that baseball still loses money, but man, how much value is it to have your brand as prominently featured on ESPN, SEC Network as it is for a whole month now? It's when this, you went away for the summer 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and I think that's a challenging point for ADs around the country as we see this shift in college athletics taking place with the amount of money that's being spent, the revenue share, because there's talk about cutting sports, this. So now where do you place what is we know what the bottom line profit loss number looks like, right? They're going to lose $3-4 million. They lost nearly $4 million last year. But what is the marketing dollars worth? What is it worth big picture? And that's the challenge of ADs right now. That was not a big deal a few years ago when you were just raking in money and deciding about building facilities or not building facilities, right? Now you're sitting here, the budget's become a much more real thing. The real dollars are a much more real thing right now than they have been. But I think it's pretty clear that this administration has been committed and remains committed to baseball, not only what they're doing with Lindsey Nelson Stadium, but also with the fact that they've been proactive in a new deal for Tony Vitello, and they know what he brings to the marketplace, Austin.
And pretty wild that he's going to make around the same amount of money that Grant Ramey makes.
I'll tell you what, here's pretty. I know the economics and everything has changed, but he's got the chance. Is he already making more than Coach Fulmer ever made in base? Seriously, think about it. In a year's salary.
I know.
And the SEC, the economics have changed tremendously in 15 years with the SEC network and all that. But I think that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Philip Fulmer got $1 million deal in Tempe, Arizona, while he was getting ready to play for the national title. That's when he became $1 million coach. And now you're paying your football coach $9 million, and
you paid your
coordinators. Coach. Yeah. Your coordinators are making more than Philip Fulmer made when he won a national title. But it just means more, right, Eric?
It's TV money. TV. Yeah,
it's
crazy.
The cost of doing business is more expensive than it's ever been in college athletics.
Yeah, things have certainly changed over the last 20 years or whatnot. Vols crushed 93. It seems to be a good time to grade the staff on evaluation and recruiting overall, as well as coaching and development. Kind of a wide range of questions there, but in terms of development, I think for the most part the staff's done a really, really nice job. Austin and Rodney Gardner speaks for itself. Josh Heupel on the quarterbacks with Hendon speaks for itself. We'll see what Nico does and some of the individual examples all across the football team. So development overall now and with some of the guys who have gone on to the NFL, I think speaks for itself. As far as recruiting, how would you say the staff does in terms of evaluating and then locking down and getting on campus?
Evaluations, I think they're fine. I think recruiting can always be better. I think the staff can be better, whether it be relationship building, being able to close out, a kid that you've been the perceived or said to be leader, for months. And so, I think they can continue to get better. You can continue to improve. They're by no means bad, but I wouldn't call them, I wouldn't say it's A++ either. So, again, I think that, you want to continue to evaluate, figure out ways to get better as a staff. And I think that's a way they can get better. Development wise, I think they're fine. Evaluation stuff. I think Tennessee's been ahead of the curve in a lot of evaluations. Not saying they're perfect. It's not like that they've been first on every kid, but you look at several over the last 2 or 3 years, Tennessee kind of identified a guy that ended up blowing up before others did.
Yeah, it's about closing, but that's the bottom line in recruiting anyway. It's about who you get, not about who you didn't get. It's about who you get, who you close with, and
it doesn't matter if you play well in the first quarter, right?
That's right, absolutely. I've seen a lot of guys make the turn in pretty good shape, but you triple bogey 3 times in A-man corner. Well, you didn't do that in A-man corner, right? AP, you were right. You were dominant that day, but. It's about how you finish, and I think you can always improve in that area, and I think the staff certainly can do that as well.
Big O Vols 26. Do you all have any thoughts on why we backloaded the OV schedule instead of bringing in at least a few bigger names earlier? I don't pretend to know if that is the right or wrong move. Just curious on your thoughts on the reasoning behind the strategy, Austin. Again, no official visits, a couple this weekend, and then you got like 20 the next 2 weekends. Why so many on the back end of the month?
Well, because I think for the way Tennessee recruits, Tennessee's not, some schools push, hey, you got to get in, you got to give us an answer, you lose your spot, and they threaten and stuff, and that's just not Josh Heupel's style. It's not this staff style, and so you're better when you're not going to push. I'm not saying they don't, I'm not saying they don't try to see if the kid's ready. They're not going to threaten the kid. You lose your spot if you don't get in right now, like some schools do. And if you're not going to do that, you're better to have the last shot. Now, inevitably, you're going to run into situations where a kid pulls the trigger before he ever gets to you. And that's going to happen. But that's going to happen regardless. I guess I would probably bump it up at 1 week. I would not do the last 2 weekends. I'd probably do the middle 2 weekends. And then, if you've got a kid that you feel really good about, you maybe bring him in that last weekend or a few kids. But, I think that that's something that they do on purpose. And again, you have to be able to withstand a run or two. I gave this analogy to Hubs, and I said it the other day, and it's very true. This is the guy. You're the leader of the golf tournament. So, and you look on TV and the morning wave on Sunday is making a run. You got a guy that shoots a front 930 and all of a sudden he's tied for the lead or one shot ahead. Now you still have the most holes to play because you've not teed off, but you got to go out and perform. Tennessee's going to have to go out and perform these next couple of weekends. This weekend with Josh Petty and several guys, are 6 as of right now coming in. And then next weekend around, it's almost 30 as of now. Again, that number likely gets trimmed back a little bit, but what is trimmed back? Is that from 28 or 29 to 24? It's still going to be 20 plus, and then the following weekend 20 plus. And so you've got a ton of kids coming in, and they're going to have to show their best the next couple of weekends to kind of flip some momentum back and close some out.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy, and it's one of those deals that I think it's different than it used to be, Rob, but because signing day is not until December. So now you're talking about how big of a factor is getting the last visit when you're still 5 months from signing your papers. Okay, whereas back in the olden days, here I go again with Tennessee used
the olden days, it's like 1700.
Tennessee used the Martin Luther King weekend as their big recruiting weekend in January. And then it was Florida State who backloaded that last weekend. And you were in a lot of cases, you were trying to survive the Florida State weekend to the finish line because they brought them in and brought them out, took them out on Sunday, and they signed on Wednesday. And everybody would talk, Rob, for years about, well, Bobby Bowden, boy, they're losing it. They're slipping a notch. And then that last weekend, they get 12 or they get 8 commits. Florida State used that to perfection. But again, 72 hours is what you were weathering once they left your campus. This is a little different because you're trying to weather 5 months.
Yeah,
because a verbal commitment's still a verbal commitment. I mean, you can flip it a million times.
And just for me and you in those olden days, it was always, I mean, the Florida State weekend was big because Tennessee, and they were always bumping head on, 6, 8, 10 guys. I mean, because the way they were recruiting. But to your point, AP, there's not a perfect playbook for this month. Do you not think? I mean, you're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids that might get swayed on the visit. I mean, if you front load it and you don't close on a kid, then fans are saying, oh, you should have waited and tried to get the last visit. He left on a visit high. Now we're slipping. We've lost momentum. So I mean, there's just no perfect answer. But I think like you said, AP, unless you feel like a kid's ready to pop, I don't see an advantage of taking one of these first 2 weekends because, like Humber says, I mean, even though they commit, I mean, they're not signing for 6 months.
Yeah, a second part of the question was, is this typically done with the summer OV since Heupel's arrived? And I mean,
yes,
you pretty much answered that.
Yeah, the last couple of years especially. I will say this to Hubbs's point. Like, you see less kids, especially with Tennessee. How many kids have decommitted, though? Like, really, you have to get them in now. Like, if you wait, like, the kids just don't flip like they used to. Like, a few do. But, like, it's not some big run of decommits. And Tennessee's been very fortunate, even going back to to the Jeremy Pruitt era. Like, they just didn't have a lot of kids bouncing around. Like, they, once a kid committed, he was kind of locked in.
Yep, agreed. I mean, and that's a credit to the staff. And I think you're seeing less decommits around the country. For one reason, Eric, because guys can leave whenever they want to.
Yeah.
So, hey, I got a good deal to go to this school. I'll ride it for a year. If it don't work, I'm out of there. Not a big deal, And I think that has probably calmed some of the decommit stuff down because it's not a 40-year decision, right? Or it's not a 4-year decision. It's, in some cases, a 6-month decision. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you could sign and be a midterm enrollee in January, and you can leave in May. Like I say, for me, I'm out of here. And so that changes and probably limits some of the decommits that we saw because there's not as much pressure because of the freedom to move.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more.
A lot of times you go through this recruiting process and you get really, really close with certain staffers at certain schools, and you don't go to that school, you go to this school, but in the back of your mind, you're saying, man, 6 months, if I don't like it, I'm going to reach right back out to this guy. And then let's not act like tampering doesn't exist in the meantime, right? So,
sure.
And let's not act like, somebody, there's no sour grapes anymore because, coach said, all right, well, have a good freshman year. We'll leave a lot on for you.
We'll leave a lot on for you.
So, Rob, you're saying you shouldn't tell a kid when he tells you he's not coming and he's going to end up pumping gas. And
you should not in this day and age. You should not tell him he's going to be pumping gas back home in South Carolina.
Yeah, probably not.
And honestly, that's how Carissa, Eric's wife, kind of went with their marriage. Like, she was like, I'm going to give this a year. If he's leaving the toilet seat up, manscaping over the sink and not washing it away, leaving his underwear laying on the floor, I'm out.
Oh, some truth.
Where's she at, by the way? Maybe she already figured it out.
Let's hope not. Athrun got a couple. If his recruitment ended today, would you say that the tackle Sanders was a vol? I'm talking about David Sanders.
Uh-oh, AP. On the spot here.
That one's going quiet, AP. What happened?
What's
it mean? What's it mean, AP? What quiet?
I personally I continue to like where Tennessee's at, as much of the national media has liked where Tennessee's at. Now, still going to survive official visits, though. Again, Tennessee went into last weekend leading or tied for the lead with 3 kids, and all of a sudden they come out and they're tied or trailing. Kids are kids, and they're not going to have bad times on visits. Good news is for David Sanders, he's got a mom and a dad who are pretty smart and knowledgeable, and they stay on top of things. And David's a very, very mature kid for 17 years old, and so I don't think he's going to ride the wave maybe like some others.
All right, let me ask you this before we move on from David Sanders. Biggest competition for Tennessee is who? Most people thought it was Clemson for the longest time. Is it Ohio State? Is it Georgia? Who's the biggest competition, or do we know?
I don't think anybody knows. The fact that it's always like it's Tennessee Clemson, it's Tennessee Ohio State. I had somebody the other night say it's Tennessee Georgia, and I'm like, well, what's the common denominator out of all of them? It's Tennessee with somebody. So like, who is that who's laying in the weeds for David Sanders, right? So like, again, we'll see how it all plays out. He's got a few more visits to go in the month of June, and then he'll start working towards a decision. But Tennessee has done a pretty fantastic job with Big David up to this point.
What recruits do we have to worry about the most not making it to Knoxville before he commits to his OV for that to happen?
Who's going to commit and not make the OV is what he's asking.
Yeah.
I thought that you look at Travis Smith, Juan Gaston, some of those guys, but I mean, they're all going to take these visits. So, I mean, I'm not sure anybody pulls the trigger before they get to their OV. That doesn't mean Tennessee won't be in a tough spot by the time they get to the OV, but I think everybody's going to take the visit. That matters. The one kid that committed to North Carolina the other day that was supposed to be here this weekend, he's not coming. But I mean, like it wasn't anybody that's like the fans are going to be like, oh, So I mean, like, I think everybody that has real name value for the class that fans are really engaged in, I think they'll make their visits.
Have the last of the high school kids finally arrived on campus? Any early word on them? How are they looking in shorts, AP?
Yeah, everybody's here. Bennett Warren showed up in really good shape for a massive human being. Same thing, when it comes to, Jordan Ross. They've got some big kids, and I think when you look at like let's say the offensive line, we've talked about that a little bit. About those offensive tackles, I don't think Tennessee has to be like. I think Tennessee can kind of cherry pick the offensive tackle situation. If they only end up with David Sanders, that would be okay, because all of a sudden you have Jeremiah's Hurd, who another one that showed up and looks fantastic. You have more tackle bodies. They had like 2 tackle bodies 2 years ago. Now they got like 9. You talk about what Jesse Perry did in spring. Gage Ginther can play some tackle. They moved Trevor Duncan over to tackle. Jeremiah's Hurd, Lance Hurd, John Campbell, Bennett Warren. You can keep going right down the line. Like, it just feels like Tennessee is in a much better spot at that position than they were 2-3 years ago when they had really nobody. A lot of lack of depth whatsoever. So, I don't think that it's just a necessity you have to bring in. I think it's more important, Hubbard, that they bring in interior guys, because you'll lose so many after this year.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too, that stood out to me, and we'll get going to the next question here. But one of the things that jumped out to me, the notion for years was you take all the tackle, and I said this on the podcast a month ago, take every tackle body you can get. And if they don't play tackle, they slide inside. We don't live in that world anymore. Because if you go to a kid who says he's a tackle and you try to slide him inside, where's he going? Right? Going to the portal. So you don't recruit that way anymore. Right, Rob? You don't recruit defensive linemen and flip them to offensive linemen as easily as you used to. You don't take tackles and slide them inside the guard as easily as you used to because of the fear of the portal there. And guys are pretty locked into the positions they want to play. That's why I think you're recruiting true inside guys. And maybe not as many tackle bodies as I said a month ago when I said take everybody. Because you go tell one of those tackles on the roster now, hey, you're sliding inside. He might just tell you, okay, if that's what you're going to do with me, I'm out of here. I'm gone.
Philip used to do it every fall camp almost. It seems like, flip a kid over. But when's the last time before Doug? I'm sure it's happening. I'm blanking. But when's the last time before Trevor moved over that somebody's flipped once they were here? And I'm sure it's happening. I'm just forgetting somebody. My point being, Philip used to, literally every fall camp or spring practice, it seemed like it was happening.
It's happened before this one because it was just a guy that never played, but the only one that comes to mind is Bumpus and Fant.
Yeah, I'm trying. Who was a successful? I guess it would be a better way of putting it, because there's a ton of them with Phil. Fred Weary. You can just keep rattling off.
Yeah, Fred, Cozy Coleman.
And Khalil McKenzie would have been another one had Philip Fulmer been the head coach.
If Philip Fulmer would have been the head coach now, Omari Thomas is lining up on the offensive line this fall for Tennessee. He's not playing defensive line. I guarantee you that, because I know how Philip Fulmer thinks. And I also know what he's told people.
Last run here from Athrun. What senior needs to have the best senior season to have a chance at being drafted?
Keenan Peely.
That's the first one that came to mind too, because
He's
he's
got
old
the
and
injury
he hadn't
concerns.
played.
He's got to stay healthy and ball.
Yeah.
And if he does that, I think Tennessee's defense is going to be pretty nasty.
I would put Brew McCoy in there just because he's coming back from the
That's a
injury.
good one on
He's got to show his speed. Those would be the two that stand out to me the most right now.
I'll say John Campbell too. I mean, he's super old.
He's just got to be consistent. I mean,
Yeah.
his talent. I mean, there's talent there. It's just what kind of step does he make from last year to this year? Where's his consistency, durability, that type of thing? I think he can help his stock a good bit if he makes it through the season.
All right, we got plenty more questions to get into, but first let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
That phone number is 865-524-5888 for a free estimate by calling our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions. All right, let's jump back into it. We'll go to Sam Smith, 2233. Cain, the scout on Kenton Deverman, and with him being a Missouri kid, when will he be committing to Tennessee? If Tennessee survives Deverman, do the Purple Aces have anything else that could give the boys some trouble? Yeah, he's a really good pitcher. Fully expect him to be, the game one starter there on Friday afternoon. He's only a freshman, throws from the left side. He's got a 9-1 record, 3.81 ERA, 15 starts on the year. He's thrown over 100 innings at 106 and a third. Donovan Schultz is another starter that has pitched a ton this year. I think he's logged 16 or 17 starts. ERA is a little inflated. It's in the fives, but a 6-2 record. Overall, I mean, their team ERA is like in the, I want to say it's like in the 200 somewhere. It's 145th in the country. It's at 5.95, so you're almost at a 6 ERA team-wise. So that's nothing that's going to scare you an awful lot. But when they had to make some pitches there in Game 7 of the Greenville Regional earlier this week, I mean, they did. So I don't think there's. I mean, I think this guy's pretty good, Deverman. I think Schultz is the guy that's experienced, obviously, but I don't think it's nothing that Tennessee can't handle at the plate. And then Sam Smith also says Tennessee is clearly on the easier side of the bracket, so is it a natty or bust? I was thinking about this the other day, Austin. You and I were actually talking about it. I'm never going to say natty or bust because I just still think it's so incredibly difficult to get to Omaha, to win Omaha. You got to do a regional and then a super when you're at Omaha. I mean, it's tough, and all these teams are there for a reason. However, well, you look at this path, Austin. On paper, it's about as easy as it can get, right? You don't play the game on paper, but it's an easy path. And then you look at Tennessee's side of the bracket. If you get to Omaha, no SEC team. Sure, you got FSU, you got Carolina, and some other talented teams on your side, but you don't have no Georgia, don't have Florida, don't have Clemson, don't have A&M, don't have Kentucky. I mean, it sets up pretty nicely, AP.
Yeah, it sets up nicely for what you just said. I like the fact that you're talking about new opponents. They don't have a bunch of scout on you. They've not played you 4 times. Had LSU gotten in and you were sitting there playing the Tigers, if I was them, I would have just thrown the guy they threw to started every time that left-handed reliever guy starts against Tennessee or pitches against Tennessee, he eats them alive. I mean, like, it's wild the success that dude has. But I mean, yeah, for my liking, it's a path that you would favor, right? And favor, I think, because no scouts. And I think, it works against you because you don't know the other team as well. But I think if you're Tennessee, you kind of like that. And I think this team, from a putting the ball in play perspective, the way Inslee's hitting, the way Dreiling hits, the way Tiers hits, Christian Moore, obviously, like, it's not as they broke the 22 record for long balls, but I felt like that team was so predicated. Like, I think Tennessee's very comfortable hitting a bunch of opposite field doubles, especially Dreiling, Tiers. I mean, you can go right down the list. I mean, I like the way this team, bats, the way they hit the ball. They hit a ton of home runs, but it doesn't have to be that to win. They've showed you that all year. Yeah, they've won games 12-4. They've also won games 4-2 and 4-3 and 3-2 by getting timely hits that were within the framework of the ball yard. So, I think that sets up well for what is a huge ballpark in Omaha.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Got to get the Omaha first. Of course, Evansville coming up this weekend, and we'll have the porch, and I'll have previews.
Oh, it
and all that.
Was Hubs consulted on game times? Because this sounds like some times that he would pick 11 a.m. I mean, like, like what's going on with that?
Hubs, that just goes to show you what the executives and everybody thinks about this series. I don't think it's going to be competitive at all. Tennessee's going to run right through them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Evansville probably loves the fact that Saturday's an 11 o'clock game because it's not going to be as hostile of an environment. If I were Tony Vitello, when I was talking to anybody, I would certainly be challenging my fans to be rowdy and ready to go because 11 a.m.'s not what you're looking for. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody says Tennessee and Evansville's must-see TV compared to some of the other regional matchups. So, I mean, the only way you were going to get probably night games is if you played the Thursday through Saturday, right? Is there some Thursday through Saturday?
No, it's not Thursday. You mean Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, Saturday through Monday, excuse me. And so, I mean, I would want Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and whenever the game times are is whenever the game times are. But I don't think any TV person's going, hey, man, this is, we want them in prime time.
I guess my thing is I don't even mind noon. 11 a.m.? Why are we starting a game? Why are they starting a game that early?
If you're in Nashville, literally, you're waking up, eating breakfast, going and running an errand, coming home, and I mean, it's game. I mean, it's 10 a.m. It's game time. I mean, like kegs and eggs, right? I mean, it's wild. It's early, but from a media perspective, I love it. From a fan's perspective, I think it stinks. So I agree with that. If there's a game 3, if necessary, that would be at 6 o'clock on Sunday. So plan accordingly. Imissdenariusmoore says, in terms of on-the-field production, what was the best recruiting class UT has ever signed?
Oh, I'll go to do what?
94.
Well, 94 had Peyton Manning, Marcus Nash, Jonathan Brown, I guess Spencer Riley, Chad Clifton was in that class. I mean, 94 was good. 97 had Travis Henry, Travis Stevens, Dominique Stevenson, Jamal Lewis, Cozy Coleman, Fred Weary, Deion Grant. That was a pretty good class. I would say I would probably look at 97 from a production standpoint. What's interesting is the 95 class is the winningest class in school history. And it was perceived to be one of the weakest classes because it had Black Monday and they lost all the defensive linemen. But it was bookended by the 94 to 97 class, which helped. Now, you throw Al Wilson, who was a great player, and some other good players in that 95 class, but they were enhanced tremendously by what happened in 94 and 97. That 97 class is pretty doggone good. That one's right at the top for me.
AP?
No, I mean, he's going to be able to speak about it better than I can. I mean, because you got to look back at it like
it's
that.
Not
that
been anything
before
in the last couple of decades is what it is. The deal.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really go on anything. I mean, like, you got to go literally the 90s because, I mean, like, the amount of success they had in 45 and 5 and all that, and, had Hubs not called Derek Chambers a ton, they'd have got him too, and that would have really enhanced that one class.
Hubbard, Black Monday.
I messed that one up, and you messed up the offensive lineman in Charlotte that went to Florida.
Yeah, DJ Jeffries or DJ Humphreys.
Onward to the next question, please.
Moving along. A lot of people say Tennessee can't reach their ceiling if they don't break into that top 4 to 5 in the SEC in recruiting rankings. Considering Tennessee's success and the transfer portal, is there any truth to that anymore? Can Tennessee continue doing what it's doing and reasonably expect to compete for a title? I think that's a good point, AP. I mean, you always want to be in the top 4 or 5 of the SEC rankings because that means you're top 4 or 5 in the nation. But with Tennessee's success, and Rob's highlighted it here lately, it's really good success in the portal. That's kind of an equalizer a little bit.
It is, and I don't think that you have. I mean, like, I get it. Fans want to be number 1, number 2, whatever it is, in recruiting, and I understand that. But at the same time, what was Michigan? What was Michigan the last handful of years? Look that up. What were they preseason ranked? That's why you don't get big enough. I mean, like, I love rankings as much as anybody. They're good talking fodder. That's it. Like, at the end of the day, it's up to each individual kid, their drive. It's up to each individual coach to develop, said kid. So, I mean, like, you look at the teams that have, there have been plenty of teams, Washington, Michigan, and that's just last year. You go back to Michigan State, made the playoffs in a 4-team playoff. There have been a handful, TCU, that they weren't top 5 in recruiting, and they found a way through development. They're getting guys, and again, I think you can go to the portal and build on your weaknesses from there. So again, you want to be in the conversation. You certainly want to be there, get the best players you can get. But I don't think that's an end all be all anymore. At the end of the day, you really want to, you want to be in that playoff, and I think Tennessee can definitely do that, doing what they're doing.
Let's go to the ADaug. It seemed like last year the staff had trouble closing on recruits. Is that changing this year? If so, what is different?
Don't know. I mean, they've not had any official visitors except for one, and he committed to Tennessee, so they closed on him. So all that starts this weekend. They'll have 6 guys or so here this weekend, and then a plethora the next couple of weekends, as we had talked about earlier, and we'll see from there. It's as pretty simple as that. You don't know for another 2 to 4 or 5 weeks, whether they've closed better this year versus last year or not.
I love that word. Good word, AP. Let's keep you working here. DolittleVol says, what's the timeline and the primary competition for Faizon Brandon? See the type of personality that other recruits will be drawn to. Do you foresee him being a peer recruiter?
I don't know. He's a polite kid. Doesn't seem like he's overly, But I mean, if you just talk, if you're an adult and you talk to George MacIntyre, you're going to go, there's no way that kid's a good recruit. And then with kids his own age, he's fantastic. And so I think you just don't know, because I've not seen Faizon interact with other kids that are his age. As far as the timeline, somewhere between December and April, in my opinion.
All right, we'll go to the next one. How confident are you that Will Brooks could hold his own as a starting safety in the fall, Brent Hubbs?
Well, I mean, I think the staff really likes Will Brooks. I don't know. I mean, I thought Jacoby Thomas Robb would be the guy opposite of Andre Turrentine, and we'll see what that looks like coming out of fall camp. But I mean, every time Tim Banks gets to the podium, Rob, and they're talking about safety, he's talking about Will Brooks. He's very comfortable with Will Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, fans don't want to, form a walk-on or whatever to be the guy that's starting safety in the SEC. But, I mean, Hubbard, in my experience, and I know you probably agree, anytime a coach continues to, throw a kid out there unprompted, then, he's sending a message. And I'm not trying to say Will Brooks is an all-SEC player, but I think that, as you say, that anytime you continue to hear a guy's name like that, it's comfortable is what I think you had a good word there. The staff is comfortable with him.
Another question here. What's the confidence level that Tennessee can flip the momentum and the Josh Petty recruitment going into his official visit, Austin?
I don't know. I think that'll depend on this weekend. So I don't know what the confidence level is. I think we'll know more about the confidence level coming out of this weekend. Everybody's talked about the sister is in school at FSU, or has been admitted to FSU. She's not in school at FSU. Has been admitted to FSU, and that being a big, a point for Florida State. And so we'll see kind of going forward, where this thing goes. But I think you'll know more coming out of the weekend, probably Monday, Tuesday of next week. You'll have a better feel for, does Tennessee have a real shot to flip the momentum there and potentially land Josh Petty?
Here's a pretty good one. That's from DolittleVol 5. Austin said he expects the staff to not run Nico as much because of the quarterback depth and of its importance. Would you say that he runs more or less in between these numbers here? So he puts out the numbers for Joe Milton in 23 and Hendon Hooker in 11 games in 2022. And I'll skim over them real quick. Joe was 78 attempts, 299 yards, 7 touchdowns. Hendon was 104 attempts, 430 yards, 5 touchdowns. The poster says, I would say that if we expect to be a playoff contender, he is going to have to exceed all of those numbers. What say you guys, Rob? Do you think?
First of all, I don't remember saying that, but sure. I mean, I don't think they're going to run him against Chattanooga. But
I don't think there's any way you can
absolutely going to run him.
I don't think there's any way you can say he's got to have 105 carries, or it's just you can just forget it. Just forget it. He's got to have 105 carries, or it just ain't going to happen.
But look at Iowa, man. I mean, Brent, they had those 2 quarterback runs. 2 of the 3 or whatever. I mean, they were designed. The third one was Nico, but the 2 were designed and they were drawn up. They were blocked well. I mean, it looked really, really good. They did that with Hendon a little bit, but there's obviously not much behind Nico. So the
I'm
question
saying
is
less than 100. I would strongly suspect less than 100.
Here's what you don't know in the numbers, okay? Of the numbers you presented out there for Hendon's numbers, how many of those were design runs and how many of those were scrambles improv? Okay, yep. Nico may scramble and throw off platform more comfortably than Hendon did. Hendon's deal was first, second read's not there, protection starts to break down. I'm not going to extend it looking to throw. I'm going to take off running. So I don't know if it's 104. How many of those Alex Golis said, all right, we're going to run it 97 of the 104 rushes he had. They were design runs. They weren't. In big games, they will run Nico more. Austin said that just a second ago. We've all said that throughout. They're not going to get him beat up against Kent State, Chattanooga, and those types of things. They're going to be really smart there. But when it becomes critical games, critical times, they'll run him more, just like they ran Hendon more against Florida his senior year. And they ran him more against Alabama than they did against some other teams. And that's the way it'll go. I don't know that there is a set number at this point in time.
WHVOL says, how many recruits will we pick up in June by position, Austin?
No clue. I mean,
just take a guess at it. Come on.
No. And I resent the person for even asking something so simple.
You're no fun. You are no fun. Leosbuddy says the higher end recruits seem to be on constant unofficial visits. Given the schools want peer recruiting, example George MacIntyre, is it safe to say that the schools are paying a significant portion of these recruits to keep making unofficial visits happen? I would say that is a no.
No, I mean you can't pay for a kid to make an unofficial visit. I mean Jeremy Pruitt did. We see how that resulted for Tennessee.
And he's
right. How'd that go when you paid everybody's hotel room visit when they came in on an unofficial visit here?
He's got the summer off.
The way a couple summers off. The way I interpreted the question was, Austin, that are they paying the George MacIntyres to continue to peer recruit? The answer is still no.
Correct. You can't pay the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't pay him. You can't pay him to come on an unofficial visit. It's illegal.
HCMBrook says, who is the former Vol that didn't make it in the pros that you would have loved to see take advantage of current eligibility rules, such as the COVID year? Who is one Vol that you wish had one more year to cement their legacy as a Vol, even though they didn't pan out in the pros? He said, I'll go first. Chris Walker.
I like this question. Go ahead, AP.
One more year. Now he's not had his shot in the pros yet, but one more year, Jalen McCullough.
Who?
Jalen McCullough. One more year.
For me now, Lane left.
That's one of your best ever.
And I love Jalen McCullough.
Lane left, so I don't know what it would have looked like. But what would Crompton have been in his second year with Kiffin and Chaney and the offense there? I would love to have seen Montario Hardesty with one more year of ball too. Now, I know he got a shot in the NFL and it didn't work, but he had just a great last year after dealing with all the injuries. Those were two guys that jumped out to me when I read that question, which I think is a good question. Rob, those two were kind of. I mean, if Wes Brown could have played again,
I was going to say Wes Brown.
He would have taken shots and whatever else he had to do in his knees, every week to get to play. Who ended up obviously being, he gave it everything he had. Same thing. I mean, Nick Rivez had a great year with Monty Kiffin. I mean, part of it's the fit and what you're doing. But to me, Montario Hardesty, that he was really fun to watch that senior year. That one year he had healthy at Tennessee, he was a lot of fun to watch.
One more banger year. Like from on a non-funny standpoint, I'd go Chuck Webb, Kelly Washington another year.
Kelly played in the pros though.
Yeah, but he didn't play that long though.
The first name that came to mind for me.
Yeah, if he had been there, like I guess if he had focused on football the whole time and not played all those years of baseball.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Crompton technically got drafted, but I mean he didn't have a long NFL career. Donahue 27 says, question about Coach Elander. That's Josh Elander, assistant associate head coach for baseball. How much is he currently being paid versus what he would be making if he took a head coaching opportunity? I realize we don't play with monopoly money, but is there a dollar amount Tony V sees as worth it to keep him on staff as long as possible? Any insights, Cainer? Right now, his base salary is $325,000, according to the UT database. Of course, there are incentives in there and escalators and all that. And there's
y'all
other
make
ways.
the same amount. It's pretty impressive.
Huh?
Said y'all make the same amount of money. That's
Yeah. Very impressive.
Locked on balls money, baby.
Yeah, for sure. But Bert, we kind of talked about this a moment ago about with the Tony Vitello extension and kind of what he'll be asking for, and more so than anything, he'll get his, but he'll be wanting to take care of his staff and his support staff and all that. The thing about Josh Elander is, I mean, he's done everything he can here. He's ready to be a head coach, in my opinion. I think he'll be a pretty good one. He's run the offense, he's run the defense, he's called pitches, he's worked with catchers, infielders, outfielders. He's the hitting coach. He's a great recruiter. He served as interim coach whenever Vitello's been out. He's done it all, and I think he'll be fine. But because he's at Tennessee, I mean, he can be super selective. He doesn't have to go and jump at the first opportunity he gets. If South Carolina wants to hire him, I think that'd be a great opportunity for him because South Carolina is going to invest in that baseball program. But if Southwestern, Missouri State, whatever, wants to hire him, like, he can be patient. I think that's more or less the conversation with Josh Elander because he's in a really good spot here. And Vitello obviously would try to bump his pay to keep him, but he won't keep him forever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, is there a point where Josh Elander says, I can't get a Power 5 major job from an assistant's chair? Okay. Now, Tony Vitello did, and it's worked out great for him. So if you're Josh Elander, you're like, I want the Vitello path, right? I want to go from being SEC assistant to SEC head coach. Okay. Is that because of Vitello's success in doing that? Is that a realistic path? Or is he getting into a situation with his agent and they're hearing, well, you got to have head coaching experience, and that puts you in a situation where you think you've got to take a job? I don't think Elander thinks that way, and I think it's a mistake to think that way because I'm not sure. I know Evansville's in a super regional, but how many of those stories are there where there's enough commitment in baseball to recruit the kind of players you want to recruit, to put a roster together that you can hold through the transfer portal and have a chance to really build your resume and land a job somewhere else? Those are the things Josh Elander is thinking about every offseason. It is, okay, am I staying too long, right? And we've seen coaches do that. We've seen head coaches at smaller schools in all sports who stayed too long. You should have left when you had a chance. And they didn't. And all of a sudden then they went kind of into wasteland. We've seen assistant coaches stay too long, and they're kind of like, well, they were the hottest commodity, and now they're not talked about. Those are all the things Josh Elander is looking at versus how much money Tony Vitello is paying him. And Josh really likes it here. So we'll see.
Two more questions to end on, and they're going to be fun. Number one, Austin, this is specifically for you. Who's going to see the field contribute first, Emmanuel Okoye or Shadavion Bradley?
Emmanuel Okoye.
And then last one for us all. Rob, we'll start with you. RockyTopMojo says, if you each had a walk-up song, what would it be?
Oh, man, I wish I would have needed some time to think about that.
This is easy for me.
Hakuna Matata, AT, is that going to be your walk-up song?
Frozen.
Let it go. It's the Stone Cold Glass Break and the Stone Cold entrance.
Stone Cold.
So that's for yours. Hubs would be Amarillo Skies.
Amarillo by morning, baby.
Hubs, what you got?
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
I'll go sympathy for the devil, Rolling Stones. I'll throw that one. Old school.
Dreamweaver for Hubs.
I tell you a song I like, but it wouldn't be a walk-up song. Is and I always liked it when it first came out because it's a kind of you prove everybody wrong song, and it was by the late Toby Keith. How Do You Like Me Now? It's a great tune where basically he tries to get a girl in high school and she won't give him the time of day. And then in the story, in the song, he becomes a superstar and he's playing on the radio whenever she wakes up and she's, got a miserable life and she passed on him. So I always liked that song. I thought that was a cool song.
Sing it for us, Hubs.
No singing allowed.
How do you
I wouldn't do that. I mean, what are you going to do? You can do Thunderstruck. I mean, you can do those that everybody does that same type of song, right? So.
I'm going to get the one that Billy's got.
Tony doesn't like that. Tony doesn't like that clapping in the dugout.
As long as you're not like Kentucky with your little.
He said he
little
didn't like
softball
the
chants.
clapping. He's
I
like,
am
don't
not
get
a
it.
fan of that song, but I do love the fan interaction when he comes to the plate.
Well, and
I
that's the thing with a walk-up song. If you're gonna do it, I'll give him credit. Find one that fans can participate in and make it a thing. Which is like, I mean, the song I mentioned, I like. That's a stupid walk-up song because everybody's like, "What?" You know, get a song that you can get everybody's involvement with because it does make it a cool experience and it makes it a cool vibe. Just like the relief pitcher from the Mets who had
trumpets.
That thing was cool. I mean, it was a viral deal. Now it gets old after a while, but
I literally was just thinking that Edwin Diaz, the pitcher there, AP.
But hey, you guys are missing the boat. What's the greatest walkout song of all time? Wild Thing, dude. In Major League 2, when he has been the corporate guy the whole time, and then he comes back and he's got the haircut and the vest, and she's like, "It's him, crank it, Jerry." I love that moment in that movie. It's an all-time moment in any movie. Don't at me, buddy. Like, that's an all-time moment.
Rob, would you go Dixieland Delight just for fun?
I would not. I think, like I said, I'd go Sympathy for the Devil. It starts out, please allow me to introduce myself. That's a pretty good.
Yep, it's true.
Pretty good walk. Right?
Yep.
There you go. It is a good one.
Eric, the Rolling Stones they're still alive, but it was a band. They were big in the late 70s, early 70s. Mick Jagger is a cultural icon. Really
I never heard of either, so good to know.
So, but they're out there. You YouTube it when we get done. YouTube them.
Put it on my list. All right. It looks like I got homework to do, so let's get out of here. Big thanks to Exterior Home Solutions for making this coverage possible. Need a roof, siding, windows, garage, whatever the case may be, contact Exterior Home Solutions today. That phone number, free estimate, 865-524-5888, or visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. Got a lot going on right now, Brent Hubbs. Tons and tons of recruiting. The next couple of weekends, Josh Petty, the headliner here for the OVs this weekend, and then it gets real the last 2 weekends. We got Tennessee baseball playing for a spot in Omaha this weekend. Tennessee football news, basketball, that and more. There's no greater time than right now to join us over at Volquest.com.
No doubt. And, it never stops. It never rests. And obviously this is a huge month. It's a critical month in recruiting in June. And obviously everybody's excited about what this baseball team can do in the Super Regional. So full coverage of it all. Be sure to check us out, participate in the General's Quarters, be a part of the family. I promise you won't be disappointed.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, there is a promo code where you can join us for a discount. That's flashed up on the screen right now. You can join us on the General's Quarters. Okay.
If you join us without the discount, Hubs will send you an audio track of him singing "How Do You Like Me Now?"
For Austin Price, Brent Hubbs, Rob Lewis, I'm Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys for joining us here on the Volquest Mailbag Podcast.